My name is Kurt and I'm the owner of Rainforest Expeditions. And despite my name, I'm Peruvian. And us Peruvians, we have a big misconception about the Amazon, or this idea that the Amazon is a place that doesn't really belong in Peru. No. I was born in Lima, but since age 8 or 7 I've been a big fan of the Amazon. Always looking at wildlife pictures, always. At age 8, I used to know the Latin names of animals in the Amazon. So that's a little bit, that's a little of how nerdy I was about animals, you know? And it stuck ever since. I was into the Amazon, into animals, into wilderness, and as soon as I could find a time to do so, I came to the Amazon, saw it firsthand, and decided this is where I wanted to work. Nowadays I live in Lima, but I live in Lima because I have 3 kids and a wife, and yeah, not everyone's ready to live in the Amazon, so I go back and forth, and because I get to come here often, I don't complain. Well, I got started in college. I got started before college, and right after high school, the day I graduated from high school, the next day, I took off on a trip with 2 friends from high school. I used to live in Colombia back then, in Cali. And I went to Iquitos, which is this town up in the northern Peruvian Amazon. And we took a 1-week boat ride. And we saw, on this 1-week boat ride, we saw kingfishers, dolphins, some vultures, maybe a couple of other things I forgot, but not much else. And I thought, well, this is, you know, what the Amazon must be like. Must not be easy to find wildlife around here. A couple of years later, I got a job in college working for a scientist, and I came down here to Madre Dios. And in the first hour, walking in a trail in Madre Dios, I saw 5 species of monkeys, and I knew this was the place I wanted to work in. Then I worked for 2 years or 3 years as an assistant to biologists. I studied macaws, I studied giant river otters, I took a lot of data. It was a lot of fun, but at that time, 20 years ago, it was really hard to find jobs in that arena. And so my business associate, who's a little older than I am, Eduardo Nicander, he had already come to the region, to this part, to Tambopata. I used to work in Manu. And he had set apart or purchased the rights to a piece of land where Tambopata Research Center is now, and he pulled me over to do some bird inventories and some help with the Macaw research project he was beginning, and that's how I came to Tambopata. And little by little we learned how to, because, you know, running the logistics of a research operation is like pre-kindergarten to tourism logistics. We started learning about tourism logistics, and one thing led to another. We set up a tour company a few years later. The first place, we started all of this at Tambopata Research Center, which is the lodge we have 7 hours upstream from Puerto Maldonado. Our nearest neighbor is a park guard who lives about 30 kilometers away. The rest of the reserve is uninhabited. When we got there, this was free for all land. We actually overlapped the timber concession, you know? And we placed our concession, our rights to the land, right on top of that timber concession, on top of a clay lick, you know, to make sure that clay lick would not be hunted by the timber extractors or whoever. And that's how we started kind of putting our foot in the door in the area where Tambopata Research Center now lies. So we started with a very small investment, no? Basically a friend and family investment to get us off the ground. We bought some boats, some motors, we made a platform on top of these stilts, a palm thatched roof, some mattresses that here in Spanish we call them lengua de gato, and which translates into cat's tongue because they're so thin. Now we put those on the floor, we put mosquito nets on top of those. We built a dining room just across from the main sleeping area, and the kitchen was on the ground. We would prepare meals on the ground, and we had latrines. People would go to take a bath in the river, no? And with those installations, we started receiving our first clients over 20 years ago. And we got basically expeditionary types, no? Some scientists, some very hardcore, heavy-duty filmmakers and photographers doing documentaries, and some bird watchers and a lot of parrot fans who were coming in to see what at the time was this unknown nature spectacle or groundbreaking nature spectacle, which was a macaw clay lick. That's how we got started. A macaw clay lick is a place where it's a riverbank where macaws and parrots and other animals come down to eat the clay, which has the highest density of sodium. At that time, there was a lot of debate over why macaws would come down to eat clay and parrots. Now it's pretty well established that it's because of the high densities of sodium. It's a complement to the diet. So why are there no macaw clay licks in Brazil? Or why are there no recorded macaw clay licks in Brazil? Or why are all of them concentrated in Madre de Dios? No? And that is because of the fact we are so far away from the Atlantic Ocean. No? In Brazil, you're closer to the Atlantic Ocean. So the salt from the Atlantic Ocean sweep into the Amazon in the air, in the atmosphere, in the wind, in the rain. And the fruits capture the salts of the ocean. Those fruits contain sodium, right? By the time the rain makes it all the way here, or the wind makes it all the way here, it's got no salt left. So the fruits here have no salt. And that's why macaws need to go to clay licks here. That's why this is the place that harbors the highest concentrations of clay licks of anywhere in the planet. So after a couple of years at Tambopata Research Center, we started getting an interest from nature tour operators, no? And they started coming to visit us, the owners of the nature tour operators, Wild and Adventures, International Expeditions, etc. And they started telling us, look, this is a really good nature destination, this is a really good experience, but you guys need to invest a little bit in the accommodations for us to be able to send you clients. So they loaned us some money up front to improve the accommodations, to build the actual walls on the rooms. The wall that looks out into the forest we left open, but we built the 3 walls that make a room and that make it a private room from your neighbors. No? We built some bathrooms, we improved the kitchen, we improved the mattresses, and on and so on and so forth, and we made it look more like a nature lodge. No? And the reason we left the wall non-existent, why there is no wall on any of our lodges, is because when we started getting our first clients, the first thing they said to us, or the thing they said to us as they left, is this experience of being out in the middle of the rainforest, inside a house, but not really completely inside a house, 5 meters away from primary rainforest, is incredible. It's like camping, but at the same time it's like staying in a hotel. Now, don't change it. And we didn't. And it's one of the signature trademarks of our lodges. People love it. Tambopata Research Center, over the years, remember when we started, this was not even a protected area. It was just free for all land. In 1990, they declared it a reserve zone, which is a transitional, form in Peru that the government uses to protect an area while it is being studied. And while the government determines, well, this might be better off as a reserve, or as a national park, or as a national sanctuary, or it might be this is not worth protecting. No? So they turned the part we are in into a reserve, and the adjacent part into a national park. That's how the Tambopata National Reserve and the Bawaja National Park came into being. And at that point we started negotiating a concession with the government for the land we were using. And that concession, it took us a long time to negotiate because the government had no experience negotiating concessions inside of conservation units. No? So we basically laid out the groundwork for tourism concessions in conservation units, along with a couple of other lodges that were already operating at the time in other places of Peru. And now Tambopata Research Center operates under this concession given to us by the Peruvian Protected Area System. We have an 18-room lodge with 8 shared bathrooms and a trail system of about 20 kilometers that gives you access to a lot of the different habitats that are present in the rainforest: bamboo forest, palm swamp, floodplain forest, terra firma forest, riverine forest, etc. And it is very close to the Macaw clay lake. Well, when we set up the lodge, how did we pick the spot, right? We picked the spot with some friends from the native community of Infierno who we were just getting to know at the time, and we brought them off on the trip and said, so in this piece of land, where would you build a lodge? And they said, oh, well, I've been coming here since the time of my granddaddy, and this place never floods, And well, the rivers in the Amazon, they're like snakes, They're essentially no slope, so there's no canals, there's no channels, And they flood over kilometers at some points, during the rainy season. And sometimes a massive flood will change the shape of the river. And these massive floods will occur every 500 years, much more than a granddaddy lives. And that's what happened, In a massive flood, sometime in the late 90s, the shape of the clay lake, which kind of buffered the river against the research center, changed. And instead of turning like this in front of the research center, the river it ate a piece of the clay lake and it started coming right in front of it, The big current started eating up right in front of it, and gradually it ate up the land until it hit the lodge. We had to move it in 2003. We had to move it 500 yards, so we tore it down. We used a lot of the reusable material. We used it to build the support structures, the kitchen, the staff room, the researcher room, and then we did the whole tourist area brand new. So that was a major undertaking. Now we made sure we picked a place which geologically had not been flooded, in a long time. I'm sure it's going to give us a surprise though. So the clay lake is a very important tourism resource, but it's also a really interesting resource from a scientific perspective, because it has a lot of macaw activity going on around it. Not only macaws coming down to the clay lake and parrots coming down to the clay lake, but also macaws nesting all over the place, And this is a fairly stable population of macaws. So since the beginning of the research center, since our first days, we've been investing in macaw research, And we do things like back in 20 years ago when we did really rudimentary research. We would climb trees and measure the weight and the development of the little chicks. We would record which chicks would survive, which chicks would die. Macaws lay 3 to 4 eggs and only one fledges. So why is that? When do you know which ones are going to fledge? When do you know which ones aren't going to fledge? Can you use the ones that don't fledge, the eggs that are the second and third eggs, can you use them to recover macaw populations elsewhere? So we did all this research, and eventually, as we got into tourism, we decided to partner with a scientist called Donald Brightsmith, who is currently at Texas A&M University at the Schubot Center for Veterinary Sciences. We partnered with him to do the research on macaws, and for the last 10 years he has been doing more sophisticated research. He's been looking at why macaws go to the clay lake, what types of conditions the clay lakes have that macaws go to, do macaws migrate, within the Amazon? Do they what's in the crops of the adults as they feed the chicks? Um, what is going on with their genetics, with their population size? You know, a lot of very sophisticated tracking, long distance tracking. So a lot of really interesting stuff. And we actually, we help fund this project along with a number of other organizations. And why is this interesting to us? Well, it's interesting to us because A, it helps us put together a better tourism product. The more we know about the macaws, the more nests we have identified, the more we know what they do, the more we know what they are, the more we know how to visit the clay lake without disturbing it, the better product we have. No? The more attractive we are to our clients. Second, macaw research is a great story to tell. No? People love to hear about it. Some things nature gives you, like the macaw nest. No? But you have to find out the story behind the macaw nest. You have to find out how it is that a macaw puts forth a chick every year. What does it feed it? How, what happens to the chicks that die? What can you do with those chicks? No? All these things are interesting stories to tell. So we look at the macaw research both as from a conservation angle, a science angle, and also as a very powerful product angle. We got into Posada, Amazonas in 1996 or 1997. We started working with the community on Infierno in those years. And the reason we started working with the community in Infierno is because Tambopata Research Center, because of its location way out there, off in the middle of an uninhabited reserve, it takes a lot of time to get there. You need 5 or 6 or 7 days to get to Tambopata Research Center. Most people coming to Peru don't have 5 or 6 or 7 days to spend in the Amazon. So we needed a place that was closer by to attract a different type of customer. No? We also needed a place to stop over on our way to Tambopata Research Center. We already had a clientele that was significant, and we were spending the night on other people's lodges. So we said, okay, why don't we kill 2 birds in 1 stone, and we find a location that's close enough to Puerto Maldonado, where we have the airport and the entry point from Cusco, so that people can spend the night on their way back and forth from TRC, and so that we can get into the 2 and 3 day market, 2 and 3 night market, which is a segment that is probably going to be a lot more popular here in Peru, where people come to go to Machu Picchu and to Cusco and all these places. And so at almost the same time, the native community of Infierno sent us a letter. The president of the community sent us a letter, and he said, you guys have Juan Pesha working with you guys, and you guys have Salvador Michaja working out there, and you have Sixto Duri working out there with you guys, and these guys have been working out there for 3 or 4 years with you guys at Tambopata Research Center. They really enjoy it. They're having a lot of fun. They've told us about tourism. Do you think you can hire more people from the community of Infierno? No. And we said, well, no, we can't hire more people from the community of Infierno because our staff is full, but we sure would like to talk about putting a lodge in your community. And that's how it got started. When the community approached us with this request, and when we returned the letter saying, why don't we talk about making a lodge, the next step was really difficult. We had to, before even talking about contractual issues, here in Peru, a native community has titled rights to a large patch of land. This case, Infierno, is 170 or something families that own 10,000 hectares of primary rainforest in a very good location. Very good rainforest with very good accessibility. It's very hard to find those 2 things in one. If you have good accessibility, the forest is going to be impacted. If you have good forest, it's usually going to be 1 day or 2 days into the Amazon, into the rainforest. So we went back to the community, and my associate Eduardo Nicandre, he spent 6 months living out here on a tent, going house by house, describing the project to each family in the community, to almost every family in the community. And so he'd go and spend a day or two with them and explain, everything from the most basic concepts, like what is a vacation? These things that to Western society are so obvious out here in the rainforest. What really is a vacation? What constitutes a vacation? Why do people travel? Why do people get off from their house in Berlin and travel all the way across the Atlantic to come to the rainforest? Is this going to solve the community's problems in agriculture? No, it's not. So we need to set the expectations where they need to be, lower than where they need to be, so that people don't have inflated expectations of the project. The right approach to talking to communities is to make sure they understand all the reasons why they should not be going into business. And even if they're okay with that, then you have a good partner. Because if you sell a project that is rosy, and then you start getting all the thorns on that project, people are not prepared to deal with it. So he said, it was a job of setting laying out the groundwork for a proper understanding of what a tourism enterprise would comprise. And also it had a component where he would detail the contract, the association contract that we were interested in signing, and get the feedback on that contract and modify it accordingly. So the way we structured the contract with the Native community, the way the contract was signed, it was very similar to a joint venture. It was literally a joint venture contract, And a joint venture contract here in Peru allows two legal structures, the Native community of Infierno and the business Rainforest Expeditions, to get together to participate in a business and to remain the rest of their life remain normal. So for the purposes of Posada Amazonas, we signed a joint venture contract. And the joint venture contract has several important components. One of them is the dividends. So the joint venture contract stipulates we split the dividends 60% for the community of Infierno, 40% for Rainforest Expeditions. Another important component is that the employment generated by Posada Amazonas, the jobs generated at the lodge or in the administrative positions that the lodge produces, should be filled with members of the community, in as much as there are members trained to fill it. And if there are no members trained to fill it, we have to figure out, we meaning the community and Rainforest Expeditions, we have to figure out a way of training people for these positions. A third important component is that we designed this kind of board of directors, that we call the control committee. So the control committee is a committee of 5 to 10 people, depending on the year, on what the community feels like having that year, that makes decisions with Rainforest Expeditions on a month-to-month basis of the management of the lodge. Now that control committee was designed initially to be more of an auditing and a fiscalizing and a committee designed to make sure that we were making proper management of the lodge. After about 5 years into the project, the community said, no guys, we want to be part of the decision making as well. It's important to us. You guys are making human resources decisions about our friends and family. You guys are making budget decisions in our home, our forest, right? You guys are making operations decisions about where to visit in the community, in a land that is, more than just an asset to us. It's our entire home. It's where we live. So we said, at first we were contrary to that because it's very difficult to have these joint board meetings. And we spent a year discussing, arguing, now we signed this contract, this is the way we're going to go through with it. Then we said, okay, look, if this is going to get us kicked out of the community, let's change the contract. And if this is something that the community is really important to the community for all the right reasons, then let's just change the contract. Let's just, adapt to expectations we hadn't identified at the beginning of the contract. So for the past 15 years, the community, or the past 10 years, the community has been taking decisions monthly on who to hire, on evaluating staff, on where to do new operations, on budget issues, etc., etc.
So now you have.
Posada Amazonas is a lodge we designed with one big change from, with two big changes from Tambopata Research Center. The first big change is that we made the bathrooms private, no? And the second big change is that we made the rooms a little bigger, and the size of the lodge is bigger. So it has 30 rooms, a big dining room, a lobby, an interpretation area, and then all the support system, and about 15 kilometers of trails, no? And some really cool attractions around it. It has a lake with giant river otters. It has a parrot clay lake with a few macaws coming down. It has, we constructed a canopy tower, 35 meters up into the canopy, and a beautiful view of the forest right by a Brazil nut tree. You get toucans, you get parrots, you get woodpeckers flying all around it. And then also we visit the community's ethnobotanical center, which is a place where people from all over the region come to take care of their ills using medicinal plants. You know? And beside this place, the community built a trail with medicinal plants and that crosses their gardens and passes through their labs and so on. You know? So it's a really good 2 or 3 night introductory experience into the Amazon. There are many reasons why a private company in the Amazon rainforest should and needs to work with native communities. No, some reasons are just plain reasons of ethics. No, the Amazon rainforest has been occupied by these people forever. No, that myth about the Amazon being unpopulated is just that. It's a myth. The Amazon rainforest has had a very the opposite of dense, a very scarce population, no, for all these years, for forever, no, but it's been, that population has been all over the place, no, and that population uses the forest. The people use the forest in many ways. They hunt, they use it for medicine, they use it for construction, they plant there, they have crops, they have small farms, etc., no, so to come in and just because the government has given you a concession in a part of Peru to do ecotourism, no? And then say to the neighbors who may have been there forever, or for 20 years, or 50 years, or 100 years, guys, no more. You don't use this land. Don't hunt here, no? It's very tricky to get that across. It's very difficult, and it may just not be right, no? So what we do is we go to the community, and we said, look, to do tourism here, we need animals. People are going to come here because there are macaws and because there are monkeys on the trees. And for monkeys and macaws to be on those trees, you guys need to make some sacrifices. You guys need to stop hunting in at least a part of the community, in at least a part of the community that we're going to use for tourism, you know? Because animals become afraid of humans if they're hunted, you know? And so that is going to be the commitment of the community. That is one of the important parts of the contract. No? Certain areas of the community are left as standalone areas. No areas that are intact or that are not going to be touched and are not touched because of the fact that you need the monkeys and macaws in the trees and the peccaries in the ground. No? And so if you want that people to commit to that, you need to work with them. You can't just, you know, do it all from a legal standpoint. You need to have them have some incentives to be able to manage that in a different way than the way they've been managing it for the past hundreds or thousands of years. You know? That's why it's important to work with the communities. That's why we got involved with the community of Infierno in this way. Posada Amazonas has had a big impact economically. It's been commercially very successful, so there's dividends that have been split with a community for the past 15 years, and it has had an impact on the daily life of people in Infierno. Most of the dividends a community receives are split between the families. So about 80% of the dividend the community receives go to the families. The other 20% are used in communal reinvestments. This is just the way they decided to do things. And the money that goes to the family is invested in haphazard ways. I mean, it could be, imagine what would happen if that happened in your hometown. That's pretty much what happens in Infierno. Some people invested in sending their kids off to college. Some people invest it in sending in starting a business with their brothers. Some people buy a lot of equipment for the house, a peque-peque, a stroller, a tin roof, you know? And some people drink it up. Some people travel to Cusco. You know? There's a lot of different ways that dividends have been used in the community. One use that we didn't predict would happen, and then has happened, is that people now have money and they can invest in what they were doing before tourism, which was farming, you know, and they can buy chainsaws, or they can contract more people to work at the farm, and the farm expands, you know. So and then other people have invested in homestays to get more tourists, to get tourists to come to their place. So there's all different sorts of economic impacts at the family level. A really interesting thing is that there is this scientist called Amanda Stronza, anthropologist, did a study of, she's been following the project for years, you know, and she started noticing that every year people would invest like in this wave of things, you know. So at the beginning it was tin roofs, you know. So okay, people want a tin roof, they build their tin roof. They got that done. The next year, it's a peque-peque motor. They want to make transportation easier, they buy a peque-peque motor. That one year it was strollers, you know. So it's intriguing. Why are strollers a big thing all of a sudden in the community? You can see why a tin roof is a good investment. You can see why a peque-peque is a good investment. Is a stroller a good investment? Is a stroller a good investment? Might be. Or it might be that it's just a fashion thing for that year in the community. Who knows? No? But these are things, it's neat to see a community play out these options because it means they're more independent. They have more options. They have more decisions to make. Their life in a way is more solid because of the wealth of decisions they can make. And so that's essentially been the economic impact in Infierno. If you want to put it in numbers, which I think is the most uninteresting way of looking at it, the community, each family, just because of dividends, excluding what guides are making, excluding what community wage earners are making, excluding what suppliers are making, only out of dividends a community has doubled their income. Community families have doubled their income. What's happened is that something very similar to what happens in Western civilization, in Western society. You know, you have the areas which are allotted for conservation and the areas which are allotted for life and for quote-unquote development. No? So the area around Posada Amazonas, the 3,000 hectares where Posada Amazonas is, which are used for tourism and which are called the communal reserve, those areas are very well managed from a conservation perspective. In other words, people don't go in there to hunt. The other day I heard in the community this really interesting factoid. No? A guy got up and said, when we started the project, I remember hearing about 15 gunshots a week. No, I can't remember if he said a week or a day. Nowadays, if we hear one a day, that's a lot. No, so that's an indicator, a very clear indicator of what's been going on with hunting in community grounds. And why is this? Because community members have a significant economic incentive from the fact that tourists come to their territory to see macaws and to see monkeys and to see peccaries. They understand that, and they put a value on the peccaries and monkeys and macaws that does not have to do with the value of a monkey in a pot. Now a monkey in a tree is more valuable than a monkey in a pot, no? And that translates into people getting in trouble if they're caught hunting in the communal reserve. What does getting in trouble mean? It means your goods are confiscated, and it means your dividends are forfeited for a year. So it's a pretty significant penalty. And now think about it, let me put that into perspective. Imagine if you go into France one day, or you go to Italy, and you say, hey, people of France, drinking wine is bad for conservation. You can't do it anymore. No? Or eating pasta is bad for conservation. You can't do it anymore. So that's essentially what happened in Infierno. They said, look, hunting in this part of the community, eating tapir, eating peccary, eating monkey is bad for conservation, bad for tourism. Let's not do it anymore. Let's sacrifice that in favor of tourism. No? So it's something that's not perceived as a crime. It's not perceived as something negative, hunting. Something that's a lot of fun to do. It's almost like playing soccer. It's something that's good food. This is what they've been eating for Sundays every day since they were little kids. And it's good, cheap protein. No? All these things, you need a very big incentive on the other side for people to commit to not doing that. And that's what's going on in Infierno. And it's pretty remarkable if you think about it. But on the other hand, outside of that reserve, life goes on as usual. It's business as usual. If the market pays for you to plant corn, people now have more money to buy chainsaws or contract workers to buy corn. So that also goes on. And there's also the people who find a way to invest in businesses that do not have to bring down the rainforest. No? Fish farms, homestays, handicrafts, etc. So you have all this dynamic going on in the same 10,000 hectares. It's like a microcosm of what's going on in Peru, and I'd say the world in general. Socially, what happens whenever you bring a market element into a traditional community like Infierno, or a semi-traditional community like Infierno, is that you create these situations that were not present before. So traditional communities are very egalitarian. No? People are more or less the same. No? When you create market mechanisms like tourism, you have people that are better at tourism. You have people that may have more of a vocation towards tourism. You have people who may find it easier to be a guide, or who may find it more exciting to be a guide. They become guides. They start generating extra income in addition to the dividends. And then all of a sudden, these are people who have a series of assets that the others don't have. Maybe they're sending a kid to college. Maybe they have a house in Puerto Maldonado. Maybe they can afford to set up a business on their own. No? And the others who may not have the tourism vocation or the inclination to get into it, they're kind of left where they were. No? So you create these gaps, and these gaps create tension, and that tension does not always spill out well. No? So what's happened in the community is that there's a lot of tension over how to spend the money. No? Old people, they want health-related issues. People with kids, they want education-related issues. No? Opportunities, how do you make use of them? Who gets which opportunity? All these things have resulted in a community that has more tension, but at the same time it has better decision-making mechanisms than it had 20 years ago, just out of sheer practice. They have to get together more frequently, more often, to make decisions of a harder nature, of a more difficult nature than they had to 20 years ago. They've gotten better at it.